Hi, I'm John of John's Carnivorous Plants, and this is my indoor nursery. Today, oh man, it's the Cephalotus Rant. So, this is where we go into me shooting shots at random internet information here. Everyone and their mother has a different way of growing a Cephalotus, okay? And I'm not even going to pretend it's otherwise. No, they quite literally, almost everyone I've talked to has either a different soil mix, different watering philosophy, different feeding philosophy, just repotting philosophy, like just everything. Cloning philosophy, just it's all over the place. And that's where I'm here to tell you some solid facts, okay, from my years of experience of like, okay, I've done it for years. How can you grow a cephalotus? And the answer is there's many different ways to skin the cat. I think a best point to start with is why do people have failure with cephalotus? And this one is kind of tricky. People will very often fail with cephalotus and say they're hard to grow plants, and that's not true. They're not hard to grow, especially once you understand how they grow. You'll find people will have them die because of root rot. You'll find they die because of crown rot. And then very little in between of how do you prevent all of that? Well, answer is cephalotus grow where there is a constant movement of water. So like even though they're in a bog area or something like that, there is a current. They are like whenever you see them in seeps, the water that's going through the seep, it's moving. There is some element of movement to their water, which means it is more oxygenated. So if you haven't seen my video on root oxygenation, highly recommend checking that out because it's very applicable here. It means that they're usually getting a lot more oxygenation to their soil. So what is the biggest issue with cephalotus in cultivation is that if you are tray watering it, you are likely going to keep the tray too high of water level. It rots them out because it's too anaerobic for them. It might not be too anaerobic for a sundew, might not be too anaerobic even for, a nepenthes, like because some of my nepenthes I'll keep in a tray. However, with cephalotus, they really do need about 2 to 3 days of the tray being dry before you put any more water back in there. If you're top watering them, I found this was like whenever I had a smaller collection and wasn't dealing with as many plants, it was way easier for me to maintain cephalotus by top watering them. Now, having the Pediolaris sundews, because their wool will, accumulate water right in the crown. I'm very used to like having to take like, a little pencil or toothpick or something or chopstick or something and getting into the crown of the plant and slowly like directing the water off of them. You want to make sure that there's no water sitting in the crown of the cephalotus. You want to water the crown, but you want to make sure that whenever you're done, like shake it a little bit or whatever, make sure that crown is not like, constantly sitting in moisture. Like it doesn't have like a little bubble of like, not bubble. Actually, yeah, bubble would actually be correct. A little drop of water, stuck in the crown there. Because if you continually let that happen, eventually it's a prime environment for fungus to start growing and you end up with crown rot. So it's like, which way do you go? You go tray watering, you risk root rot, and you go top watering, you risk crown rot. They both work. It's just you have to be aware of the oxygenation issue. Otherwise, you're just never going to have success. And then it's funny to me because I'll see like really experienced growers say, oh, I don't want to like get into cephalotus. I'm kind of worried about them. And they'll have stuff like Helianthera or Nepenthes and other pitcher plants going very successfully. And it makes me laugh because in my opinion, I think a Helianthera is harder to grow than a cephalotus. Is it necessarily true? I can't really say because every time I've come into these plants as myself, like I've always had compounding levels of experience. So it's very hard for me to just be like, oh yes, it would be more or less hard than an Nepenthes for a beginner. I will say it's more difficult in that if you have no experience in watering your plants consistently or like having a plant that has a very strict watering schedule, it will be more difficult. And if you're one of those people who's kept other plants before, especially like finicky ones or ones that, you know, you have to like very consciously be like, okay, this is getting watered once a week on this day. And if it still has water, I'm going to wait an extra day, do it, check it again the next Sunday, and just keep the cycle going. If you're used to that, then cephalotus aren't going to be an issue. If you've already been maintaining a large collection, you shouldn't have much of a problem. If you're new and you don't have your humidity, your lighting, or your other factors dialed in yet, it's going to be kind of a challenge, just because you're facing all of the problems of a new grower, in that you don't know what kind of mediums work best. You don't know if you're watering correctly. You don't know if your light is correct, etc. And on top of that, you're now throwing in these variables of, well, is the crown too wet? Because if it is, it's going to get crown rot. Am I not keeping the tray dry enough? Because I'll start having root rot. And honestly, the best way to know that is to have literally any of the other plants. You know, like if you're keeping Venus flytraps, for example, too wet, you know, they're eventually going to rot out and die. If you haven't dialed that in enough, or like a sundew, like most sundews can handle being flooded pretty perpetually without much ill effect. Some of them kind of iffy. Like a pedicularis sundew, you can't do that to, because all those woolly hairs collect the water up top, rots them out. So it's not even necessarily that these issues are just cephalotus specific. It's just, I feel that people jump the gun. They'll go from a Venus flytrap that they bought at Lowe's or Walmart or whatever, Trader Joe's, etc., and they want to jump into the more exotic plants. They get a cephalotus and don't realize that while their Venus flytrap is alive, it's experiencing root rot issues because it's overwatered, or they aren't consistently watering it. So just because it's still alive, they're like, oh, I'm still succeeding, I should be able to do the cephalotus. Go to the cephalotus. They haven't dialed in the Venus flytrap, so the cephalotus just collapses way quicker because it can't handle the same amount of stress. So it's not necessarily that they're easier or harder. It just requires more finesse than what somebody who's inexperienced will have. Let's see here. Yeah, wow, I actually hit all of the notes on my outline here without even trying. So that was my overblown cephalotus rant. I hope you enjoyed. I hope I found it informational and whatnot. Please like, subscribe, check out my nursery below, buy some plants to help support me, or hop in the Discord and come talk with me. All works. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.